Wrestling Radio Show. We got a great guest on today. Very long list of accolades. Two-time Pennsylvania state champ. He's a Hall of Fame member in the state of Pennsylvania. Three-time EIWA finalist, three-time NCAA qualifier. Multiple-time record holder here for most pins in a single season and most career pins at Army. Wally Crum Award recipient, Mike Natvig Award recipient, and USMA class of 1993. We got on, about to retire, Fulbright Colonel David Warnick.
Welcome to the show, sir. Appreciate you coming on.
No, thank you guys, and really appreciate you doing this. Watched some of your podcasts, and this is great to see what you're doing here, and gives us a better contact and feel for what's going on at the Academy wrestling program-wise today, and get to see some of those faces that we just read about in the scorebooks or in the results pages, and get to know them a little bit more personally. So I think it's an awesome thing you guys are doing.
Appreciate that. We I think us starting this is starting to do exactly what we're trying to make it to do. You know, given that Gavin recommended you coming on, so it's almost like, you know, bringing the old with the new and getting everybody to communicate a little bit more effectively. It's a good thing. I'm excited.
No, it did some good things. It inspired guys around my age group. One of my classmates, Ray Arredondo, has recently set up socials with Zoom calls with our time frame. It wasn't specific to our class of 93. We had some 92 and some 94 guys in there as well. But we've had 3 or 4 of those socials where we think back to the good old days and our times at the Academy and wrestling, and where we've crossed paths in our careers since. And I think you've inspired a little bit more of that type of thing as well. And it's great to reconnect with all those guys.
Awesome. That's great to hear. Yeah. Colonel Arredondo, he's an awesome guy, doing a lot of good things.
Yeah, Ray's a good guy.
So kind of starting out, you know, we want to, do it chronologically a little bit. You know, you had a lot of success coming out of high school, 2-time Pennsylvania state champ. Jordan left it off, but you won the Dapper Dan match. I wanted to include that in your accomplishments because I think that's it's a big deal in Pennsylvania, especially, you know, in Dapper Dan in the 80s and 90s was a really competitive match. So what made you choose West Point? I know West Point had some really good teams around that time frame as well that may have contributed. Talk to us a little bit about that and why you selected West Point.
Yeah, so my dad was a high school guidance counselor, and so he helped me kind of navigate that field of, you know, what you look for in a school, and even the best of wrestlers aren't really going to make that a career, and so use that God-given talent that you've been given to get yourself an education and head start on a career field that was going to get you to where you wanted to be in life in general. And so that was kind of how viewed going into, the selection of where I wanted to go. And I didn't have anybody in my family that had ever been in the military. And so it was, a little bit different being recruited by an academy. But Jack Spates came to my house, my little podunk town of Myersdale, Pennsylvania. And he showed me pictures of the guys wrestling on the beaches in Hawaii for the tournament that they used to go to. Showed me a list of the Fortune 500 companies and where West Pointers were sprinkled throughout there. Showed me a lot of their wrestling of who they had recruited, who else was coming into the classes, what they'd done in the past couple of years. And so it seemed like a really, really good option. Wasn't 100% sold, just again because of my lack of having somebody that was in the military in my family. Plus my grades probably weren't all that great. So going to the prep school was probably the best thing for me. I had a couple of other colleges interested in me. Princeton recruiter came to my house, but there was just something about what they explained about the West Point program that I liked, and so went through the prep school. Got to meet some of the other guys there. TJ Wright with Ray Arredondo was there as well. Some other folks that didn't go to the academy, but formed friendships with them. started to feel a little bit more like I understood what the military lifestyle was after I did about 8 billion push-ups in the parking lot on the first reception day there. But that was kind of what drove me to go to West Point was looking at it. What do I want to do beyond wrestling and the doors that wrestling had opened up for me? But I also wanted to wrestle in a top 20 program. And so if you start looking at the schools that, academically are going to prepare you and give you that opportunity on the wrestling mat too, to continue to pursue your individual goals in athletics. It was a good choice, and I have absolutely no regrets at this point for making that selection.
It's interesting to hear through the years the different, I hate to use it like recruiting pitch, but what they were saying to people at the time, like when we talked to Mr. Steenledge, his prior Vietnam, it's like what they were telling him was really not all that different than what it sounds like they were telling you. And then once we get into post 9/11, and it was kind of a totally different conversation. A lot of the same things still occurred, but maybe with a different spin on it. And I understand that you come from a wrestling family, much like most people. It's not just one son; it's multiple. Your brother was pretty tough too. That just not work for him, that pitch, or he just,
yeah. Well, my dad was our head wrestling coach, and my brother was a year and 14 days younger than me, but bigger than me. And so we were kind of like twins and just beat on each other all the time. He also went to the prep school. And when he got there, it just didn't seem like as good of a fit as I felt. We'd have loved to have had him up at West Point with me. I think he'd have helped round out the lineup a little bit. But he decided to go to Harvard instead, and went on to do great things up there. He was the Ivy League Freshman of the Year, and did well. Ended up giving it up about halfway through his college career, but just one of those few guys that I've ever wrestled that I thought could beat me.
Yeah. On that topic, because we just interviewed my brother on the last episode, did you tell him much to prepare him before he came to USMAPS, or did you let him come in blind like my brother kind of did to me?
Yeah, well, it was pretty blind. I didn't talk a lot about anything that I was doing, and that continued even when I went to West Point. My sister ended up following me up there, and about 10 years later, she's class of 2002. I was a track star, and through javelin was the first 4-time Patriot League champion when she got to West Point. But she would invite my parents up to 100th night, ring weekend, those things, and I'd never invited them up. And so they were like, we could have been coming to all these things and all this history, tradition, and yeah, I just wasn't good about those types of things. So now I gave my brother no fair warning. Everything was new to him as well, and maybe I should have given him a little bit of a heads up, and perhaps he would have ended up coming to West Point with me.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
So what was West Point like back in like the late 80s, early 90s? You mentioned your sister, went there, so you've probably been back several times. What are the biggest changes you've seen there, between now and then, and how it was back then?
No, I think a lot of people talk, the Corps has, or, back in when I was a cadet, and think that it's really changed. But really the fundamental mission of what they do there is still the same, and they provide leaders of character. How they go about doing it's a little different. We were the last class that had to square the corners and walk on the walls. And then, there's been some increased freedoms, I think, that they've been given that are a good thing. You don't want to have socially retarded lieutenants going out there that aren't able to interact with society and try to cram 4 years of their college experience into, an OBC time period. Just doesn't make for good sense. But as long as they're still providing that enough of stripping you down and making sure that the Army values are your values, how they can go about that differently over time and adjust as the times change. I think they've done a good job of it. the facilities up there have continued to evolve and maintain a lot of the historic look to it, but become more modernized. So I think the academy just looks terrific. Last few times I've been back, I actually got married there in '98, and I was surprised at being able to get the slot. My wife and I only decided to get married like 3 or 4 months earlier, and it was a June wedding when all the guys graduating are normally getting married, but somebody had either broken it off or whatever happened, and ended up helping me out, and I got to have that. He also had the Thayer Hotel for the reception, which fell into our hands nicely as well. But yeah, I think it's not a lot different in what their overall mission is, how they go about it. I think it's still that premier military institution that it's always been.
One of the things that definitely has changed is I was talking to somebody about this the other day. Is they have I don't know if you've seen this, or they got a sports nutrition bar up in the gym where you can get like snacks pre-prepared, making it super easy for the guys that are cutting weight and stuff. Much like most 125 pounders that come in, they don't stay 125. You started at 126, and then you ended up moving all the way up to 142. Was that just a natural growth progression? Was that too much Crispitos and Stromboli in the mess hall? What
Yeah.
Kind of
Yeah, so most people think that the benefit of being able to sit on a core squad table is that you get to eat and not be harassed as a plebe or whatnot. I was cutting weight, so I would just sit there, and that was pretty terrible. But no, I graduated high school when I won states my senior year as a 105 pounder, and so they were recruiting me for 118 at best. But I was a real late bloomer. I didn't hit my real growth spurt until about 18 years old. I show up at prep school weighing about 140, and and I wasn't going to cut weight at prep school that much. So I think I wrestled 34 when I was at prep school, and just grew into that. And so then when I ended up going to West Point the next year, I was struggling to get to 26, and was able to make 26 first couple years and make 34 my junior year. And then my senior year, I was actually at 34, and I wrestled most of the season 34, and then I just got sick at the end of the season, and ended up having to bump up to 42 at the end, which I guess when you look back and you have regrets. I really wish I'd have figured out a way to get back down to 34 at the end of the season, and I was ranked number 3 in the country in the December timeframe, and then ended up having to bump up to 42, and it was the first year I didn't even qualify for nationals. So it just was not a good way to cap a wrestling career.
I can relate on many a court, unfortunately. I'm sitting here and I'm interested. This is an off-the-cuff question, but unlike you two gentlemen, I'm not a graduate of the University of Maps. So I'm curious, maybe where was it at? Exactly, yeah. Where was it at the time? Was it at Monmouth? And what was Use Maps like? I'm sure it's changed quite a bit too.
Yeah, when I went, it was at Fort Monmouth in New Jersey. And it was a great year. I mean, we really got to, because it's a collection of student athletes primarily. You got to play a bunch of sports. I played baseball while I was there as well, and led the team in batting, and got the Gold Glove Award at the end of the year. Played pickup games with throwing lacrosse around, and really just had a little bit of that transition of life from leaving the nest from your home high school and family to being out there a little bit on your own. So I've still got a bunch of prepster friends that we still stay in touch today. There's that connection. Had I not gone there, my R day would have been even so much worse than it ended up being anyhow at West Point. It was good for that maturity process as well. for me, and settle into the growth spurt that I'd hit as well.
Yeah.
So you kind of hit on it before, kind of with your struggles through the season. I read an article as we were preparing for this. Talked about the grind of the college season matched with West Point, and that kind of contributed to maybe not have as much success, at the end of the year. And I think in the article quoted, they did NCAAs in December or January. Probably the season would have probably looked a lot different. Can you speak to that and kind of maybe what you learned then and maybe what it taught you for the future?
Yeah, for me in particular, just the weight loss, I think, and then the regular cadet life. I didn't balance those things real well. I mean, West Point's obviously a demanding school outside of being a Division I athlete, and so when you compounded all those things, I just tended to wear down throughout the season, and I really peaked sometime around December. When you've got a season that's October to April, and then if you wrestle freestyle and Greco after that, you're really only having 2-3 months off per year. And so I never really hit the nationals where I was peaking. Like I said, my December timeframe, I remember my freshman or my plebe year, went out and I wrestled Jack Kuvo, was a 2-time national champ from East Stroudsburg. Wrestled him in East Stroudsburg when he just graduated, and he had set some ungodly record for takedowns. So I go out and I'm wrestling him. I take him down, and I'm winning the match, and we battle, and I hung in there. I think I ended up losing by 3 to him by the end, but it was a close match through the first couple periods. But I was a better wrestler in that time period. Senior year, we went to a triangular meet at Penn State duels, and it was us, Cornell, and Penn State. And that time, Mark Ferguson of Cornell was #1 ranked. I beat him by 2 points. He beat Kerry Colott by 2 points, and Kerry Colott beat me by 1 point in the triangular. In the next week's rankings, we were 1, 2, 3 in the country. And so I just felt like I had much more potential than what I did at the end of the season. And it's unfortunate the number of All-Americans that I beat that I couldn't hang that on for a folk style, collegiate style, to my record. But it did prepare me. I think that was the second part of your question, for just the grind that is an Army career. You're constantly reevaluating yourself and constantly facing those challenges of balancing that work and personal life challenges. And I think I did a pretty good job of it. I got a beautiful wife and 2 daughters that have stayed by me for some unknown reason. And I think I've had a pretty successful career and been able to use those lessons learned from the wrestling and the grind that's associated with that to pick out what's important and focus on it in my career and personal life as well.
It certainly is a long season. I'm right there with you. Are you familiar with, we used to call it at my high school, the stud rule?
Not familiar with that. What is it?
The stud rule is if I beat Brian and Brian beats you, that means I can beat you. So I'm going to go back and edit out the part where Colott beat you. We're just going to play up and crushed him. Keep that going.
Yeah, well, it's okay to have a few losses on the record, but
That's all right.
that one hurt. Penn State forfeited the first 2 weights, and we were the first actual match in that duel. And
I'll take the buzz out of it.
Get out, yeah. So, but it's good.
Do you have a most memorable match or maybe a dual meet that's kind of vivid?
Yeah, I'll actually say my very, very first match, and this is back, I don't think they're wrestling in Arvin anymore. Very first match, we had guy get hurt, so I bumped up a weight, and I was wrestling a returning All-American John Epperly from Lehigh. And I think, or maybe he wasn't All-American, but he was ranked number 6 in the country at the time. And they threw me into the lineup against him, and the core is just lining the rings in the track in Arvin, a bunch of people on the floor. Lehigh was a nationally ranked team. We were, I think, just outside of the top 20 at that point. And I go out, and we just get into some scrambles and flurries, and put him on his back a couple of times. He gets me on my back. And then finally I catch him and stick him, and the place just goes nuts. And it was just this old core feeling in that building with all the dust and the whatever other stuff is kicking around in there from the ages. But it was that was probably one of my most memorable matches that I've ever had. And then I think Navy match my Cal year, another one where went out, got into a couple of scrambles with a pretty good kid from their side, and we hadn't beat Navy for like 34 years, and just wanted to break that streak. We knew we were going to be close, and I ended up sticking him, and things didn't turn out that well for the team, but I thought that was, going to be a catalyst to get us going, because I wasn't expected to pin him, but unfortunately fell a little bit short. I think we lost by 4. Came down to the heavyweight match, and just didn't have it.
Yeah. When you're talking about the gym and the track and all that, you're referencing Hayes Gym, correct? Where the IOCT is?
Yeah. It was a great place. We wrestled a few matches there, and then gradually wrestled majority of them up in the Hollander Center. Probably my last 2 years there. One year, I think we had to charge like $1 for people to come in. It was some weird thing where we had to be a revenue sport in order to be able to utilize the facility or something. But I think that ended up going away at some point.
Some goofy rule, yeah. I always wanted to wrestle in Hayes Gym. I was begging them when I was there. I thought that would be really cool. And I pictured, all the kids that are at the football stadium in their dinosaur costumes and all that stuff hanging off the rafters, just going nuts. But it
was great. And they would start jumping up and down. You just felt like you were back in the 20s at some illegal event, taking place. It was awesome. Great venue.
When I was there, we had wrestle-offs in Hayes Gym a few years.
Yeah, we did ours. We did ours there, and I think we did the prep school versus the JV West Point team was in there as well.
Yeah. When I was at prep school, we did it up at Hayes Gym too.
Good environment, as long as you didn't breathe too heavy.
Yeah, it probably helped you in COVID now, though.
Yeah, build up some immunity for it.
Well, that'd be a decisive advantage for the Army team. They'd be a little more used to it, to the dust.
So I have to ask, and this is bad radio because the viewers don't see this, but if they went to West Point, they know of that poster. And hopefully we can get Jordan to, during this part of the segment, for the people that watch on YouTube, they can see the poster being up. But I remember seeing that. I didn't realize that was you until we became Facebook friends, the last couple of days. And I was like, whoa, I remember looking at that. Can you talk a little bit about what that match? I couldn't even see who that was. If it was Navy or if it looked.
Yeah. It was what I was just talking about. That was Cal year. We thought we could get Navy, and I go out and pick up a fall, and I come off the mat, and that's me pointing at the guys saying, "This is the year. This is the year." And man, we just it was so close. I had a couple matches that just didn't quite go our way, where we thought we'd sneak out a win. TJ Wright, co-captain friend of mine at 190, he went out and decked his opponent, and he was another highly ranked guy, which gave us a chance. I think we were down 1 going into the heavyweight, and just didn't quite make it happen. But great to see that poster. I put it up every Army Navy wrestling match as my Facebook page. We're going. I didn't get to beat Navy from a wrestling team, and in fact, the streak continued for another 4 years after I graduated. But I can claim that while I was there as a graduate assistant, that I recruited the class that was the first one to beat Navy in like almost 40 years.
There we go.
I got a little bit of pride over Navy at some point.
That's cool. I think the poster hung in the team room when I was there. Hopefully it's still there, but if the people can't see it, it's David, and he's pointing, and he's kind of like high stepping as the Navy guy's laying on his back and completing utter defeat. And the crowd seems to be going crazy. It's cool.
Yeah.
We'll use that as a cover photo for the episode.
Of course.
There you go. Yeah, we had some cool posters too while we were going through there. We had a couple that were on horses, the Young Guns. I've got a few of them. Coach Effner, I went back to see him sometime after I graduated. I can't remember why. Or maybe it was when I was just before I got married. We were swinging through, and he gave me a few of these old posters that we still had. So I've got ones from almost every year when we were up there.
That's cool. I'd like to see those if you can send them to us. This particular poster at the bottom has in quotations, "pin to win." That was one of the things I wanted to ask you. So you hold the pins record at Army for most pins in a single season as well as total career. What was it that you were pinning people with? Was it a specific move? Was it a series? And with most people that are frequent pinners, it's typically an attitude on top of that. So maybe give us kind of what was your thing.
Yeah, I was a little bit more of a counter wrestler, and I liked wrestling on the mat. And so I wasn't a real slick on my feet guy. So when guys would shoot, I'd get a nice neck wrench, and I'd torque some guys over like that. Plus, I was funky before funky became normal. I watch wrestling nowadays, and man, I'd have probably had 100 pins if I'd have been wrestling in this era, because guys are just willing to put themselves in danger. And my style was more of giving them a position where they thought that they could attack me, and then counter it from there. And then on top, I had a real good spiral ride and a half Nelson. And that's probably what I turned and pinned majority of the guys with. The local beat sports reporter, and I can't remember his name. He passed away about 5 or 6 years after I left, but he coined the name Hangman for me. And so all the articles that he would write about our wrestling matches, when he would get to me, he'd say, and the Hangman led another man to the gallows today and did whatever. But it was a really, really interesting nickname that I took a bunch of crap from the guys, but so be it. But yeah, that was it. And I just think that they've really done a lot more things with the rules of wrestling to encourage more falls. I think that's what's going to make our sport gain even more popularity than it already has. Make it exciting. Make people go out there and throw some big stuff at guys, and reward them for pinning and turning them to their back. It's the oldest and noblest sports where you put two people of equal size in a confined area, and you say go, and there's like 4 or 5 things that you're not allowed to do, and one of them's run away from your opponent. So what a great arena and venue that is. We've got to capitalize on it and make it as physical and brutal as we're allowed to.
Yeah, man, I feel like I'm talking to my twin or something. Most of the things you're saying are resonating with me. But was it more of a roll through with a spiral and a half? Like, did you roll across your back in like a crab ride?
Every now and then I do that, or else what I would normally do is I'd use my inside leg to knock his back when I had the spiral, And then if he was jamming it, I'd come into a side headlock and I could go under there.
Nice.
But otherwise, I would just keep stretching him out and tucking the head until he finally went over, and then I'd change from the spiral up into cup underneath a kind of like an underhook. But yeah, I try to teach my nephew that, and he's using it to some success in his high school wrestling now in Pennsylvania. But yeah, that's just what I felt comfortable with. I'd try anything. I did cradles, did a lot of unique stuff on my feet to try to get a guy to his back. But it was, man, I'm just getting excited. I want to get back out on the mat, and I'm 50 years old right now. I'm talking to you guys.
Do it.
It's something you just don't lose.
Plenty of opens out there still.
Well, it's funny you should say that. I did after I got married, and my wife knew that wrestling was such a part of my life. I decided, and this would have been up when I was up at Fort Drum, around 2000 or so. I entered an open tournament up there that they happened to be having, and she got to see me, and it wasn't a real high level freestyle tournament, and so I pinned everybody through it, but she got to see me wrestle and appreciate the sport a little bit.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. So do you have any funny stories about your teammates or classmates? We haven't had anyone on around your time era, so feel free to call anybody out.
Yeah. So I don't know if the statute of limitations is up on some of the stuff, so I'll try to be careful. But yeah, I guess the big thing was what you did when you were away from the school and had those rare opportunities to let your hair down. So when we were there, the big Christmas tournament we go to was the Sunshine Open. So we go down to Tampa, Florida. We'd stay at MacDill Air Force Base and then wrestle in that tournament, and then had to try to set up a duel while we were down there. But we had a little time normally around New Year's to be off. And so we're down there, and this is my plea year, and we're going out to a group dinner or something, and we're on our way back, and there's this girl in a Jeep that's in front of us, and team captain Paul Kuznick, just a great, crazy, funny guy, and then Mike Ferrari, just another cut up that those two together were just insane. So we're going along, and they plot out, hey, the next red light we get to, I'm going to jump out, jump in the seat beside her. You jump out and take a picture of me. Okay, sounds like a plan. So go up to the light. Goose jumps out, jumps in, starts to give the thumbs up, and ready to take the picture. The light turns green. Get in the Jeep. So he gets in the Jeep, and this, young girl takes off. It's like, oh crap! Now we got to follow him with the van. So we got the Air Force rental van. We're following them down the road, and they're going right where we need to go towards MacDill. And so we're thinking that, hey, maybe this, they talked to her and said, hey, just take us here and let us off. Be all right. So we go back, we go right through the gate. And this is before, pre 9/11. So some of the gates were open, but this girl didn't show any ID, just boom, we're right on in. And so the van, we finally get through our checkpoint, get up to see her. And here's Kuz and Ferrari talking to her. And it turns out that it's the CG, his daughter. And inviting us over for New Year's. The funny part was this was right in 1990, and so it was Norman Schwarzkopf. And 8 months later, Desert Storm kicks off, and he becomes this person that everybody knows his name. But yeah, Kuz and Ferrari got a free ride on the post with his daughter, and we later found out, obviously that we probably should have gone over to his house and had a couple beverages and had a little bit more of a story to tell about it. But yeah, no, there's interactions like that. I think thing that the wrestling team, my peers and the guys around our time frame, is that once you separate and got obviously a lot more social media nowadays than we did, so you can stay in touch a little bit better. But we're historically really bad about staying in touch with each other.
Yeah.
But it's great when you bump into someone that you haven't seen for years, and you pick up right where you left off. And those friends that I've had from the wrestling team, when we've had recent Zoom calls with all of us, it's just picking up exactly where we left off. These are the best friends that you will ever have. That connection between them is so strong. I think that the annex that we went through and the shared experiences of West Point and wrestling just bind you together like you wouldn't believe. And I'm very thankful for having met them all and such dear friends to this day.
Absolutely. That was definitely one of the reasons we even started the podcast, obviously. So it's cool to hear that from your perspective. I mean, even when we're talking to guys that went there 30, 40 years before I did, it's like you guys went through a lot of the same exact experiences and we're all bonded in some similar fashion. So it's really cool.
Yeah, well, I think they're still running the ski slope.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of the sports teams that go run Mikey Stadium, they do it once. We had to do it twice.
Exactly.
Just different things to show that wrestling's a little bit different than other sports.
So you said that story was your plea year. By the time you were first season, you guys realized who Norman Schwarzkopf was? Were you guys kind of like freaking out or?
Well, yeah, it was just an innocent engagement. If it had been something where we'd have been out and ended up going over with them, that'd have been something to be a little bit more putting on your Facebook page. But as it turns out, really kind of ended there. But cute story of how we interacted with them.
So after graduation, sir, you commission initially as an aviation officer. You go that route for a couple of years, and then you move into the acquisitions side of the Army, which I personally, to be quite honest, don't know a ton about. Maybe just give us what that entire experience was. And, I mean, you're kind of putting a cap on your military career now. So if there's any big overarching lessons that you could tell maybe a young lieutenant or cadet that's listening to that, then they'd probably appreciate.
Yeah, for sure. Aviation was the basic branch I chose, and thankfully you didn't have to have a real high GPA because of the medical qualifications, so I was able to sneak into it and really enjoyed flying for the first part of my career. I had a couple of maintenance units that were great. My troop command was of a AVOM as well, and during the end of that time period, and I actually had a 30 consecutive month troop command, which is kind of unheard of, but nobody wanted to take over the maintenance. They always wanted the flying troops. So I'm like, hey, I'll stay here in command for as long as you'll leave me. But during that time period, the product manager for the Kiowa Warrior came up to Fort Drum, and he was making the rounds to see the different units and what they thought about the changes that were taking place. And he had this, hey, here's the top 10 list of things that we're going to work to improve on the aircraft. And so I had myself, my QC NCO, a couple of my maintenance test pilots, and we're listening to them like, wow, this doesn't seem like the stuff that we really want to have changed on it. So I didn't know anything about Acquisition Corps. Most people don't know anything really about Acquisition Corps, but it's that place where the requirements and resources come together to go develop what the warfighter needs. And I just thought that they were a little off. So I'm like, let me look into this. Because I was at that 10-year mark where you have to make kind of those decisions. And because I was a maintenance unit commander, probably on the outside looking in for a squadron command at that point, relative to my peers. And the Kiowa Warriors were already starting to be rumored to be going away, so I didn't know if I'd even have aircraft to be out there with. And really, after your captain years, you're done flying. I mean, you'll get some stick time as major lieutenant colonels, but really not that much. And so I started looking at what else was out there. And the Acquisition Corps was something that I was very pleased to see. Again, this would have been around the 2000 time period, and we're looking at, am I going to get out at 10 years? Am I going to maybe make it to 20? If I go acquisition, there's good transition opportunities for it if you were going to get out right then. When I did get into it, I really enjoyed the program management aspects of it. Thought I brought what the warfighter needed to those discussions of, hey, Boeing, how are you making this aircraft, and what is the problem with this, or why can't we do that with it? And just really representing the warfighter and the taxpayer from the standpoint of getting us the kit that we need to go and get in the hands of the guys that are at the pointy end of the spear doing God's work out there. So I really gave it some thought. It was the right move for me. And then once I got into it, I just loved it. And so I spent the last 17 years of my career doing that, working primarily on aviation and missile programs. Did some contracting stuff as well, but it's part of the Army that unless you run into somebody that's doing it, you're probably not going to see it. And so if there is anybody out there that happens to be in that position and wants to give me a holler, please do, and I'll share my experiences with you. But it's a little unknown part of the Army that I found very, very rewarding, and others might as well.
Did you ever think about going back to West Point and teaching, or doing, I don't know if there's acquisition?
I don't know if the dean would have let me. I could have gone to PE maybe. I wasn't exactly a stellar student. I found out that well, I don't even know if I tell this story, but your cadet account, I found out that all the books that you get come out, that you pay cash, it comes out of your cadet account. And so my first year, second semester, I didn't get any books because I wanted to leave the money in that account. And I'm like,
yes,
I'll figure out how to get by. And so, yeah, I was not the greatest of students. I always peak for the midterms and the finals. But again, part of that grind of wrestling, just the quizzes day to day and week to week would tear me up. And unlike, a lot of other colleges where your midterm and your final were the vast, vast majority, West Point, you're getting 30-40% of your grade is those day-to-day type quizzes, and I did not bode well for me.
Again, we're on the same wavelength. I'm going to go ahead and coin this on air right now. I'm going to call that method of trying to graduate the pinner's mentality. You just fail all of the homework assignments and all the quizzes, and you go for the fall on the final, and it's you either get pinned or you're going to get it. So that's what I did.
Yeah, I did. I had one year of staff, but other than that, I survived. I calculated and make the right risk reward calculations, and would come in just where I needed to.
Exactly.
Mentality.
We talked about your kids are kind of growing up now, nephews in high school, and what would maybe be your advice? And we already talked. Gavin Berkeley was from your hometown, and he's a lieutenant now. And I know you mentor people. What's kind of what you tell them, your advice if they're thinking about going to West Point?
Yeah, I'd say, I think I mentioned how I really had no experience with anybody in the military. I didn't know what I was getting into. I didn't go for any real patriotic reasons at first. I didn't develop that type of feel until into my West Point career, and then probably not truly until after I was out and being an officer for a while. But they have to have that kind of makeup. They might not know whether or not they want to be an officer or be a career military person, but they've got to be willing to commit 100% to something while they are doing it. And I think if you get that type of a person that's willing to do that, then there'll be enough of them that will make it through. We'll find that it's a good fit for them, and it'll be good for them and the country. I look back on my West Point days with that kind of mixed happy and sad type of views, where There were a lot of things that were really great going through there, and then a lot of days it really kind of sucked going through there. But I don't think it's any different than what most people that age group would be going through. West Point presents some unique challenges, and I think if you don't have that well-balanced demeanor, if you can't handle stresses very well, you're not going to succeed. And so if I'm mentoring somebody that's thinking about going there, if they have any doubt that they can take it, then it's probably not going to be the right place for them. It does challenge you unlike any other school in the country, and for the right reasons. And so I think that you have to have that understanding going into it, eyes wide open. Once you get in, you can't outwork West Point. I don't know of anybody there that failed out or got kicked out who tried as hard as they could to get through the school. The professors are there to help you. You could be a rock, and if you put your nose to the grindstone, it'll be difficult, a lot more difficult for you than some of the other guys that just naturally have some of that behind them. But you can get through, and it's just a matter of persevering and working your tail off to do it. And I think that that's another part that once people get in, if it's their lifelong dream to be a commissioned officer and a graduate of West Point, once you get in, I think that you can make sure that that's a goal that you'll achieve.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. No, we really appreciate you coming on the show. Last question we want to ask is, since you're the first one around your area that we've had on here, who do you want to hear on? We want to get more voices from and I want to say, not just your area, but the 80s, other wrestlers in the 90s. We have a lot of listeners that recently graduated. They want to hear from you guys. So, if there's anybody you can shout out.
Yeah, I think it. Doug McCormick was a cadet first captain. Was the first captain in my Yuck year. He was a team wrestling captain his first year. Done a lot of great things since he left the military. Be a very interesting person to talk to. His brother also is a West Point graduate. Has a couple books that he's written that are out there. And just a very accomplished person. He's also got some probably interesting stories too from our trips down to Tampa and the Sunshine Open down there. Yeah. Brad Fensky was there while I was there, and he ended up, I think, going on. He was the wins leader for a while. I think Philip Simpson came a little bit later. Probably be another person to talk with. And then I've got, Nick Malden was somebody that was there during my time frame that probably be an interesting person to talk to. Who's just finished up his career as well within the last couple of years. But yeah, I think if you just look through the wrestling book, see who was on the teams, you can't go wrong. Just grab somebody, and they'll either have great stories about their wrestling times or their military career. Again, when we had our most recent Zoom calls with my around my year groups, boy, was it refreshing to hear these guys talk, and you'll get some flashbacks to stories. Ross Walker has a bunch of pictures, and so he's holding them up to the Zoom camera and showing them to everybody. I don't even remember cameras being around back then. Who was taking these pictures? And somehow Ross Walker in his basement, he and Mike Schewing, another guy that all of a sudden we're on the Zoom call and he's emailing, texting all these pictures that he's got. Like, you had the damn camera, But yeah, it was
pretty shocking with Mr. Steenlich. He had some photos from back then.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that was a great interview. It was good hearing him talk and his story from that perspective.
Well, if you guys got some photos, you can get over me. I'll put them up on the site for everybody to see.
All right, I'll see if we have any that are acceptable.
Yeah, nothing from the Sunshine Open. I was like, that's where all the dirty work happened.
It was a good time.
Well, you got anything else for us before we hop off?
Oh no, just again, anything we can do to promote Army wrestling, I'm all there for it. We actually had Coach Ward and Coach Effner on our last Zoom call with my classmates in that time period, and it was just great to hear them. So it's been good to take advantage of social media things we've got, and it's kept me in touch with some folks that I probably would have never seen again or might not ever see again. So I thank you for spearheading this and doing what you guys are doing. Again, keep it up, and I'll shoot you some additional names and pictures. You can do with them what you wish.
Awesome, appreciate it.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
All right, guys.
All
Take
right.
care. Be Navy.
Beat 'em.
Beat him.
Thanks for tuning in to the BHAW Radio Show. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe and leave us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform. If there's something you'd like to hear on a future show, reach out to us on any of our social media, Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Or you can reach us at email, bhaw.radio@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts, and as always, go Army, be Navy.